Hello, Benjamin. How are you today?
I'm having fun. How you doing?
Good. I'm glad we're here for our second podcast. The amazing thing to me, other than being told I didn't look into the camera enough and I wasn't bright enough, was that we didn't get cancelled in 1 week.
Well, cancel culture is live and strong. Have you looked at U.S. politics?
Yes, we need to try harder.
Or just turn our names into Jimmy Kimmel, and then
I
all
don't
will
think
be
we're that
well.
funny, and he has better hair.
He has hair. Let's be clear. He has hair. We are lacking hair.
Anyway, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today we are going to talk about one of the key forms of natural capital we rely on in mining, which is water.
Yes, because we like water.
We do like water. Um, I like it. I was just drinking it now, which is fantastic. I have lots of
I,
great access to it. I have running water out of my taps. I'm not going to ask what Benjamin has in his water. It doesn't look very clean at the moment, but that's okay.
well,
Um,
it has Indian tea to be precise, uncut chai.
okay, so it's muddy water, diluted
Yes,
water,
but it's
diluted
still water.
without sugar because you drink chai in a very strange fashion.
You could probably run a flotation circuit on the back of my tea. I don't think it would impact your metal recovery.
Might even give us a few points.
I
I
mean,
know there's certain processes that like nicotine, but that's a discussion topic for another day. Water's kind of neat because I think it's worth hearing a bit of your origin story on environmentalism, Benjamin. And I believe water was the thing that sort of dragged you into thinking a bit differently about mining and how we can make things better.
Yeah, back in before times when the New York Times was open access, I read a paper or I read an article. I call everything papers now after becoming an academic. But I read an article about the water crisis in the Atacama Desert. And at the exact same time, I was sitting in the beautiful academy, which is an old native resettlement school that was actually founded by Canadians in Vancouver, Washington, not Vancouver, BC. And I looked at it, an old apple tree that had to have been 150 years old, and the apple tree was completely flooded. And I was sitting there and thinking, I am using a computer made with copper that was sourced from Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, in one of the wettest places on Earth. Nothing, feels like nothing is rational with this decision. This made no sense to me. And at that point, I was working on water in another desert, which was the Arctic. I was working on copper in another desert, which is the Arctic. The high Arctic is very much classified as a desert, even though there's water everywhere, but there actually isn't that much because it's very superficial. Um, and I was thinking about the water footprint of the Aspen Copper Project. And between those two things, I started to really think about just the amount of processed water we took out of regions. When I realized we would have to take one of the rivers in the area down unless we came to a dry process, which is what which is what Aspen Bay is actually ended up doing. Unless we came to a dry process, it was the only way to. It was going to be a massive consumer of water in the region to the point of requiring seawater.
There you go. Don't start me on dry processing. We'll come back to that later because I do want to talk about that as we get into
It
water.
was actually our idea. Remember when we walked into their office and you looked at the ore and we both said ore sorting? I think it's the one and only project we've both recommended ore sorting
Right,
on in the world.
yep. Air jigging might just do it. I remember that now. Anyway, we will come back to that because I do want to have my say about dry processing and the way some people look at it as a panacea. Anyway, let's get back to water. So, water's been ingrained in your mining life at least since we started working together. Obviously, before that, when you were at Aston Bay. Um, so let's start talking about a framework for it because it's a pretty important resource, regardless who you are, whether you're a miner, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a person. Personally, I like having water. As an American, as an average American, I think I use 300 liters a day. Is that the figure, Benjamin?
Oh, it's higher than that, I think.
No, I think it's around that on average. Probably a little more because I live in a dry place and I water my grass, which
So my problem is my water bill comes in 1,000 cubic feet per month.
okay.
And I want to say that my house uses like 14 or 15,000 cubic feet per month, but I don't know how many people are in it by that standards.
Is that like cubic, is that like foot acres or something? Or just cubic
It's
straight?
cubic, it's straight 1,000 cubic or 100 cubic. It's some weird metric. The US water
Yeah.
bills are run on a metric that makes no logical sense.
Yep.
So, I mean, not to be rude, but there's absolutely no sense to the US water metrics. So, I would love to
But,
tell you that,
but you are paying for water. So
yeah,
there is a cost and there's no doubt a value
yeah.
because that head
And
doesn't get cleaned without water.
there's conflict. Whether you like it or not, there's conflict.
Okay.
There's absolutely conflict when you start paying for water because the reality is everyone else values it. It's one of the few places where people get to interact with the mine in any location. You're going to be dealing with local farmers, local communities, local agriculture, local road wetting. Water is the one point of interaction that every mine in the world is guaranteed to interact with the local community around.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right. I was, and it's interesting. It's interesting how it's doled out. We'll come back to the value in a minute, but I was on a school excursion with my daughter in sixth grade earlier this week, and they went out to a farm. And at the end of the day, the lady who ran this non-for-profit farming organisation started talking about water and water rights and how much water they need for the farm. And it was a really interesting discussion and made me think about my native Colorado, which pretty straightforward, fairly dry place. And it was interesting hearing and following up after on how water is doled out and the decisions on who owns the water in Colorado and how water rights are decided. And it's fascinating. We're in 2025 now, but the framework for this water rights system was built back in the 1850s when miners started first coming
Yeah.
up to the Rockies and needing water for their processing and various other functions. And we still use the same system today, which is basically a first in, you get the first right, you've got the water. And it's fascinating. 150 years later, well, 100 approaching, no more than that. Yes,
More than that.
two. Anyway, the point is, Colorado then became a state and formalized this in about 1876.
Yeah.
And these are the way the water is still divvied up today. Obviously, there's bureaucracy behind sorting it out and dealing with disagreements and stuff.
I
But
always thought the Western water licenses were resolved in 1873, not 1876. That might have been.
probably were resolved in 1873, but it wouldn't have been written into Colorado law till 1876 because it didn't become a state till 1876. Oh, he's going to fact check me.
I'm just curious.
You can split the difference, Ben.
Yeah, so the 1922 was the bigger one. But yeah, continue. We can go into the history of this. But yes.
The point is,
and
1922, that's still 100 years ago. A lot has changed in 100 years.
Yeah. Well, that was when the big water stuff in Colorado was solved. Cool. So Colorado is by the stand. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It impacts everybody. And this it's not unique to Colorado. I just use that as an example because it came up this week. But other parts of the world have similarly aged water laws.
Yes, and they're not well designed for what's happening today. They're aged in that they were set up, they were run, they were organized back in the day before modern water was actually something to be concerned about.
Yeah.
So we're working off of water rights that were granted 150 years ago for processes that don't even exist today. The bulk of the processing that was done in Colorado in the 1850s and 1860s around gold, for example, was incredibly water intensive. I'd argue the water footprint had to have been 10 to 30 times larger than it is today per ton of metal recovered.
Yep. And we set up a way to share water when we had maybe 30,000 people in the state. We've now got 6 million.
Yeah, but 4 million of those live in Boulder, so they don't really matter.
They don't use water to shower and bath. And
no. Have you smelled anyone from Boulder recently?
That was the point I just made, Benjamin.
I know. I'm just driving the point home.
I just upset one of the Colorado universities. I always get them mixed up.
Yeah.
It's not one such crime. Anyway, moving right along. So people want water. People need water. Water has value.
To be fair, while we're talking about water and mining, by definition, we lost our Boulder audience before this podcast started. Being pragmatic environmentalist is not allowed by the environmental movement today. You're not allowed to actually have solutions to problems. We just have to be angry.
You are such a troll.
I'm perfectly okay with being a troll.
No, I
Beat
want
the
to
heck
bring
out
the
of the
people
alternative.
together because there's enough divisiveness in the USA as it is. So people in
There really
Boulder, I love you. Yes. And Benjamin lives in Portland, which is like Boulder anyway, just
It's worse.
weirder.
To be fair, I live in Beaverton, which is probably it's the Parker to the Boulder.
I'm not going to touch that and get myself in trouble.
Don't
Yeah,
worry, we're giving lots of things
yes.
added out of this podcast.
I do live in Douglas County, and that's about as far away from Portland
Okay.
as you can get. So, yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's work this through. So basically, there's two water problems in the mining industry. There's dry climate water problems and wet climate water problems. And we lump them together as one water problem. But the reality is we're either operating in a region where we have too much water on the site, we have too much rain, we have too much in-pit water, we're always managing surplus water, or we're in regions that are fundamentally water scarce. And in both instances, we have a fundamental cost. In water-rich environments, we have to pay to maintain our ability to not pollute the local water system because we're going to be constantly having the mine impact the local water system. And in water scarce environments, we are not sharing water back to the local water system, and we're going to get judged for our inability to share it back in because we will consume every ounce we can, and whatever ounce we doesn't consume gets entrapped in our tailings dam or evaporated. So we're pretty water aggressive.
So we're too much or too little, not a lot of just right around.
Wasn't there a wonderful poem about that?
No, it wasn't a
Water.
in Boulder Locks and the Three Bears.
Yes.
Or are you thinking of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariners?
Rhyme of the Ancient Mariners.
Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink.
Yep.
I can keep going if you want.
No, that's enough. You can. That's truly enough. You're making me realize why we're not there. So okay. So if we have a problem where we have an industry where we're sharing ownership with a bunch of other people where we've never really had modern laws to deal with. So we're sharing ownership with grandfathered laws, and so we just say grandmothered laws because we're trying to appeal to the Boulder crowd.
I had the same thought.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Grandmother laws and all these other issues. We have licenses that were granted well before modern times. We have a lack of understanding of how much water we need because technology is rapidly changing. I'd argue technology around water is the single most rapidly place that mineral processing is changing around technology. Everything from HPGRs to other methods to reduce water consumption in tailings dams, thickener control systems, all the other fun things. I think we're getting far more efficient in how we use water. The data is relatively clear. I think we're down like 40% consumption per dry metric ton of material from 10 years ago, 12 years ago, somewhere in that order of magnitude. So it's a place where we're really quickly getting better. But the problem is we're running a marathon where no one sees that we're running the marathon because I don't think anyone can see where we started, where we're going, or where we should be. It's a non-judged marathon.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make that we are getting better. Do you think? I'm going to argue that a bit, and well, I'm going to ask you the question: do you think it's just because we're thinking about water more that we're getting better? We're actually being conscious of it and measuring it and managing it, or is it something else? I don't think it's necessarily technology because I don't think a lot of that technology, though there's a lot of new stuff there today. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disparaging what the industry is doing on the technology front to help conserve water. But we're starting to implement things that have been around for 20, 30 years.
But
is that because why? Why are we doing that now?
Because slight implementations have a huge driver to profitability. If you put a control stick, if you actually take a thickener and you modernize it, you focus on all the different feed wells and the this and the that, and I'm going to make up half the acronyms for our technical audience. I'm going to do it all wrong.
I'm fighting not to be.
Oh, I'm going to trigger you just because it's fun.
I know
But
you're trying.
if you look at all the control systems and look at all the different ways you can adjust the underflow and overflow density and everything else around a thickener, even if you compare Australia to Chile, you're 6 points better in Australia purely because they run the equipment better. So
Yep.
getting slightly better really just involves giving some control of some of the water systems to computers, which we're doing. And it involves being aware the water has value, which is very clear when you're in places like the Atacama, where a mining company is paying $5-6 a cubic meter to desalinate and pump it up a hill. It's not.
Which if you're acknowledging that and you're understanding that as you're operating there, wouldn't you think they'd be getting better than the Australians, who I'm pretty sure don't pay quite that much? It's expensive because it's dry, but it's not at those levels.
I think skill is far more important than you give credit to need. So I think the part of the problem is the Australians, from an operator perspective, have a longer operating history
Okay. Yep.
and they have a higher density of metallurgists to operations than Chile, where there's so many operations and so few metallurgists. So I think that Australians also operate under I'm not going to say a strict rule of law, but a different rule of law where water actually is a primary focus of the government, because there was a drought in Melbourne 17 years ago that people still remember. Or Sydney, I forget which one. But there was a couple random droughts in New South Wales that completely changed water policy for Australia
Okay.
because the
Okay.
price of land went up or something stupid.
Being an Australian, I will take that.
Yeah,
And please don't write too many mean comments to him if you're a Chilean metallurgist. You're good. We just need more of you.
a lot more. I think last time I checked, Escondida had 7 metallurgists for 1 million tons of copper production.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something
Like,
ridiculous.
like it was. I mean, if you want to talk about ridiculousness, 7 metallurgists means the thickener gets no love.
Yes.
You can't. I mean, you've got 2 concentrators. However many, I think they got 2 or 3 concentrators. 40, 50, 100, 200 float cells, however many float cells they have, and
A
7
lot.
metallurgists.
A lot. Which, from a HR perspective, metallurgist is very efficient on metallurgist per ton, but from an actual improving the process of perspective, it'd be great to have some more, so they
I
can
don't
focus
think
on
I don't
fixing
think
all
the
the
quality
mean
of life
points.
is there being a metallurgist if there's 7 for that size operation. Those are 7 miserable people. I mean, they've got to be running around like chickens.
Like chickens.
With it,
Their heads
have you
cut
ever
off.
killed chickens and had their heads
Yeah.
cut off?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yes.
scary.
When I was little, when I was a wee little Ben, we had chickens in the backyard.
Yes.
I had to feed them. It was cool. I don't remember,
Were
but
you
I've got cool
Did you
photos.
eat them later, or was it just for eggs?
Primarily eggs. I think we did eat some of them.
Yeah, it was traumatic the first time we killed chickens.
Okay.
Yeah, one of my early childhood traumas.
Benjamin Cox, chicken killer. Anyway, coming
I
back
was
to it.
a killer.
So there are ways to make things better, but I think what we've established is, one, you've got to realize and appreciate the importance of water, realize it actually has a value and a cost, and 3, have enough people to give it attention when there's other more pressing issues. Well, other issues that, say, management prioritize before that.
Yeah, I think the easiest place to start is just literally look at revenue per cubic meter. What
Okay.
is your revenue per cubic meter you're using in your total circuit? So look at 2 numbers: revenue per gross cubic meter, i.e., how much revenue do you get per cubic meter in your rougher flotation cell, because that's your lowest water density spot in the total circuit,
Yep.
and look at revenue per net cubic meter. What's your net revenue per recycled water? If you take those 2 metrics and just focus on optimizing those 2 metrics on a monthly basis, I'm going to argue you can shift your profitability by a penny to 2 cents a pound of copper pretty quickly
Yeah.
for less than $5 million. I mean, just there's no money in it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, historically, we know that recycled water wasn't great because every time we touch it, we change it. So
Mhm.
recycling it indefinitely may have some negative impacts on the process, because you get heavy metal species and other fun stuff building up in it, which creates problems when you pump it back upstream and use it again in the process. And when you do talk about new technologies, there's been massive innovations and a lot of them are seeping into mining now, no pun intended. There's been massive innovations in water treatment, things like RO, and that to treat water that you're reclaiming into the plant, either from the tailings dam or the thickener, that are quite modular, reasonably economic, and allow you to recycle that water so many more times before you have to discharge it.
Forget about RO. Remember those guys who were shocking the water and just pulling the
Oh,
stuff
look,
out? I mean,
there's
reverse osmosis is lovely, but that's
yes.
two steps further down.
No, look, there's
Look,
all
look,
kinds of. I just threw that out there as an example,
yeah.
Benjamin. There's electrolysis. There's all kinds of processes, even chemical treatment in different ways. We've got more efficient at doing that. So
Do
there's a
we
lot
really
more potential.
expect? Yeah. Do we really expect people to clean filters? Like RO requires someone to actually go check the filter.
Yeah,
Do we have a culture checking filters?
no,
Okay.
I can tell a story about an RO drinking water plant back in the day, but I won't. Um, but
We might
once we
lose
saw
that. Yeah.
possible impact, people cleaned it more regularly.
Funny how
Um,
that works.
a checklist was pinned up on the wall, and it was made the KPI for those individuals, especially as they drank it. So they sort of got that. Anyway, enough of that. So we have improved in technology. There are ways of doing it. We just need the time to do it, and we need people to focus on that. Maybe it's something and this is always the classic problem. The water, pretty much once it gets in the plant, is controlled by the plant personnel. Maybe this is something we need to get environmental people more involved in too. So there's more than one group just looking at it, and the bigger picture is seen rather than looking at it in one narrow space.
Nadia, who I still work for, even though she switched universities, wrote a brilliant paper about how water has like 7 different owners on a mine site, and there's absolutely no common ownership between them.
Yep.
Um, it's interesting how quickly. Yeah, Nadia was one of my professors at UBC. She's now at University of Queensland in the chemical engineering department, and we're writing a bunch of papers about natural capital optimization right now. We have 3 in draft form, which is actually kind of cool. So
Busy Benjamin.
you're busy too.
Idle hands do the devil's work. Let's just put it at that.
Hey, I had a tooth out yesterday, so I am definitely
You're still on those drugs?
all here.
Ooh,
Oh, of course. Do you think I could be this put together without drugs?
that explains a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
I'm not even going to go where I wanted to go there, but back to water. Back to water. Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things. It is a form of natural capital on the mine site that crosses many boundaries. From the people in the pit, they have water. They don't want water coming into the pit, or they're trying to divert it around, to the people in the plant who use it as the main processing medium. So it's kind of valuable. The people living in the camp and the local communities really appreciate water because they like to drink it. And then you've got the whole tailings thing. Water goes out there, it evaporates, disappears. Um, it is a really interesting medium to look at all the different groups and figure out how everyone interacts. It's probably one of the
I
few
love.
that actually does that.
No, I think everything does that. I think if you actually look at the 6 different forms of natural capital, I think all of them interact with the other 6. I think you can start with any one of them, and you can access all the others. Tailings can access ore bodies, can access water, can access humans, can access energy. Everything works that through. So if I look at tailings, water, energy/carbon, human capital, and ore bodies, those are my 5. And the 6th form actually is financial capital, which is an interesting perspective.
What about air?
Air is carbon and
Well, it's not just
energy.
carbon, air quality. We've got dust,
Agreed.
which
You,
brings
you,
us back to
you,
water because
and you
that's how
also
we
get
control dust.
And you also get to the core form of natural capital, which is the total environmental system that is being impacted. But anyways, we can fight about what the 6 forms are. But let's come back to this from that perspective. I think water is kind of key. I think that if we optimize it, if we focus on it, it's a cheap way to very quickly make things more profitable.
Yep.
And it's a really easy thing to get our hands around because the fixes are just so cheap. A control system is less than
Yeah,
$500,000.
that's the funny thing. The last couple of weeks, Benjamin, I've been doing a bit of an audit, just looking at thickness of all the things. We come back to the humble thickener and looking at published data around the world from various forms, from peer-reviewed papers to conference papers to vendor websites. And it's interesting. There's quite a number of case studies out there talking about how to improve thickeners and how to improve water recovery, specifically having less going to the underflow. And there's 2 or 3 methods. There's control systems, there's modernizing the feed well, and there is generally just replacing an old thickener with a new one. And the difference is massive. The amount of water, especially if you're a high tonnage operation, that you stop going to that tailings dam by modernizing your tailings thickener a little bit is phenomenal. You're talking, I've seen numbers from ranging from about 2% absolute change in underflow density to going to 10, 15, 20% even in the extreme cases. So
Yeah.
there's plants out there operating inefficiently and the solution's there. And every one of these had a payback less than 12 months. So they're almost no-brainer decisions, yet we don't seem to be
Half
making them in every mine.
half the solutions I have modeled have had payback of less than 9 days.
Yeah, yeah. And
This
yet
is
we're
insane.
not focusing on just, let's do that everywhere, folks.
Yeah. But I don't think we're focusing on optimizing natural capital. I think we literally have a decision that we're so focused on optimizing financial capital. We're so focused on optimizing how we use our financial balance sheet that we don't get all the other balance sheets we're impacting.
Yep.
So anyways, recapping this, Ben, if you had
Yeah.
a choice of where to focus, do you first want to focus on water or do you first want to focus on ore body utilization?
I think water's a lot easier in some ways. Because a lot of it comes out the back of that processing plant, and there's a lot, and I'm biased because I'm a metallurgist, but I think there's a lot there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, and I love focusing on some low-hanging fruit.
I mean, you're lazy.
Why not? Why should I if we're going to try to make mining operations more efficient and better, why shouldn't we do the easy things first? Why are we looking for the harder things?
I don't know, because sometimes we're sadists. Sometimes we really want
Yeah,
the pain
yeah,
just to have
okay,
the
but
pain.
let's start with the easy stuff.
Cool. So water's your first. I think water's my first as well.
Yes.
I think water's the very easiest thing to play with. And I love water because the number one reason that I think water really, really helps is the moment you get water in control, tailings dam liability goes down by an order of magnitude. A good water system where you understand what you're putting behind the dam, a good water system that controls everything, immediately unlocks the next form of natural capital, which is tailings.
Well, actually, I'm gonna say that I don't think water is the simplest, but I think water's where I'd like to go first. I think some areas of energy are potentially simpler. There's savings to be made in energy doing quite easy stuff, but I think there's enough focus there. I think water probably has a bigger impact in terms of the overall footprint of mining.
I would argue that if I wanted to drop my costs, if I
Oh,
got 50,000,
absolutely. Okay. Yep. No, that's
if
that's
I want
fair.
to drop my costs, I can drop my costs with water in a week or two. If I want to start playing with energy and playing with how I'm doing grind size and other things, it's going to take me 6 months to do the paperwork.
No, I agree, but I think there are a lot of low-hanging energy things just to but the debate is, and I'll argue the point with you. I don't think I need to argue with you. I think you agree 100% with me. When we go in trying to optimize energy, we might inadvertently sacrifice something like recovery, which is an absolute no-no because all
Okay.
matters.
So so
So
so
I think
before we
water's
debate
the place to
so
start.
before we debate energy, let's debate recovery.
Okay.
Let's debate why we care about absolute versus marginal recovery and why we don't think metallurgical recovery is the only reason to do things. So if you still like us, come back next week and we're going to debate why we think metallurgical recovery is a really bad metric.
Excellent. We love recovery, but we don't
But
measure it right.
yeah, cool.
I'm down with that. I look forward to the discussion. This one will be a bit more controversial, I think, and should be
A wee
fun.
bit. For all those who love ore sorting, which we started with, yes, we do like ore sorting in places like Aston Bay, but for the most part, we are not part of the ore sorting bandwagon, and that makes things
No,
interesting.
no.
Cool.
Excellent. Thanks,
Thank you
Benjamin.
all. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.